Welcome everyone to the last SPSIA Success Workshop on study abroad for the fall 2020 semester. My name's Nick Shank. I'm the head of undergraduate advising for the School of Politics, Security, and International Affairs. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about study abroad in general, as well as the exchange programs offered by the school. We'll also talk a little more broadly about the act of studying abroad and some things to think about. Let's go ahead and start by doing my little presentation. Share this screen. And then I'm gonna, nope, that's not helpful, right? Let's swap screens. Boom. All right, so here's some contact information. Don't have my email up there. Just a little heads up, I am going to be on leave until February. In terms of study abroad timeline, that's not a huge deal because really what we're looking at filling in the coming days are fall 2021 and spring 2022. So there's not an issue that I'm going to be out of office for a couple months. But I do manage all of our exchange programs, which you can find listed on the website. I'm going to pull that up a little bit later in the conversation. Another good office to know is the UCF Abroad office. They can talk a little more broadly about some of the programs that I'm going to mention here in a minute. And then also I work with them in tandem. If you do study abroad with one of our exchanges, they're a great resource helping with the logistics, visas, working with the host institution. My part of exchange programs is helping students identify what programs work best for their major and their interests and goals. Make sure you're good to go for one of our programs. You meet the requirements, and then you're making a good decision, and then ultimately working with you on the academic course selection and bringing those credits back. They handle pretty much everything else. So it doesn't hurt. They have a bunch of virtual study abroad 101 sessions you can sign up for. I recommend, if you're interested, go ahead and pick up one of those and learn a little bit about it. I'm going to cover some of what I think they talk about in general. So types of study abroad. So I've mentioned exchanges. There's a little picture of our website, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those are. Partner programs or third party, and then faculty led. Those are the different types of exchanges you'll find on the study abroad website. So the major UCF study abroad website, not specifically ours. The only thing you'll find on our study abroad page is exchanges, because those are the only programs that we promote on our website. And let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons and the differences. So exchanges are typically about a semester long. You can utilize your financial aid because part of the exchange agreement is that you're paying your tuition to UCF and you're going to take your courses abroad at the host institution. Because they're semester long or longer, you can stay sometimes for a second semester if you like. They are a little bit more expensive, but when you break down the cost price per day, they tend to be a little bit more of a financially sound investment. They range from about $4,500 to about $8,000, and that includes flight and fees and services and all kinds of other things you have to pay for, along with obviously cost of living. When we talk about budgets, we typically don't include an entertainment or travel budget. So a lot of students, when they go study abroad, part of their goal is also not only to explore the host country, but typically the surrounding countries, especially when we look at Europe. And for my student who went to Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan, sorry, he went around to the surrounding stans as well. So there's a lot of travel opportunity. If you go to Australia, you're probably just going to explore Australia. It is a continent in its own, so a lot of room there. One of the biggest cons that I find working with students is typically that commitment you may not be able to do some other things that you want to do. That's why planning for study abroad early is best. You know, if there is a course that's only offered in a particular semester, and that's the semester that works best for you to study abroad, we may need to make some you know, adjustments. The overall cost, like I said, is rather large. You'll see that it's not terribly large in the context of other study abroad opportunities, especially when you're talking about the difference. We're talking about at least 4 months, right, that you're going to go study abroad. So a semester long one, but it is a pretty big price tag. And then lastly, the limited geographic and content areas. So you are sort of stuck with whatever agreements we have. And we have 9 now, so it's not like you only have 1 or 2 to choose from anymore. So I think this is, while it is a con, hey, if you want to go study abroad in Paris, France, I can't do that on an exchange, not at least through our school, but you know, I can get you into at least 6 other places in Europe right now. So third-party program providers, leading off of that last con of exchanges being area, well, this is one of those pros, is that you can pretty much go anywhere. Third-party provider programs, there's dozens of nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations that partner with institutions around the world to provide study abroad opportunities. These can range from anywhere from days to full semesters or longer, but you are going to pay a premium for that opportunity to study abroad wherever you want and pretty much take, for the most part, whatever classes you're looking to take. We do still run into some issues where I really want to study abroad in this country, and this is the program I found that fits maybe my budget, but the classes aren't there, right? They're not offering, say, political science classes, and maybe you have a minor, but they're not really offering classes that your minor is going to accept. So third-party programs tend to have some issues with that connection of curriculum. You cannot use financial aid typically. You're going to be paying tuition either directly to the host institution in another country, or you're paying it to the provider program. So the company, you're paying them a sizable amount. And typically you can't use any kind of federal aid. You certainly aren't going to be able to use Bright Futures if you have Bright Futures, where the exchange programs, you're paying tuition at UCF. So you're getting that money that you would typically get in a normal semester. Obviously, in all of these cases, you want to work with study abroad and talk about how flexible your financial aid is. But typically for provider programs, again, you're paying institutions that aren't recognized or eligible for federal aid or state aid. And then basically one of the other cons in there is going to be that the bulk of the work is kind of on you, right? This is a program that you're going to have to identify. You're going to have to get the information, the syllabi that we need to review. You're going to have to coordinate with potentially multiple departments. If you're taking some political science courses, you're going to coordinate with me in the advising office. You're taking some history courses, you're going to have to work with history and the College of Arts and Humanities. If you're also taking a language course, then modern languages, right? And you sort of need to quarterback all of that because it's a specific program that's outside of the purview. We spend a lot of time doing that already with our exchange programs, and so you don't see that part so much if you do an exchange, because that's something that the institution does, that we do. We work with our partners abroad to make sure all this is straightened out. Whereas with a third-party program, you're basically sort of building your program, which comes with that sort of background work. There are good options. Summer options is really, I think, one of their strongest areas. Our exchange programs are pretty much all fall spring. Exchange programs across the university in general or fall spring only. So if you're looking to go study abroad in summer, you're probably looking at a third-party program, and that's when you'll see the cost being a little lower towards that $2,500 roundabout cost. In general, recently I've seen some 3 to 4 week options that are around $4,000, which isn't terrible, not counting flight. So maybe around 4,800, almost $5,000. I mean, it really depends. But they do have some good summer options. When you get into the larger semesters, that's when we're looking at those much bigger price tags. But if money's no object, they're great. They can get you pretty much wherever you want to go. Faculty led, right now with COVID-19, I don't imagine this is an option that's going to be too popular, at least until we've settled down, because these are programs that are led by UCF faculty members. There are a lot of work to put together, and ultimately they have to have certain level of commitment of students going in order to make them count. They tend to be financially pretty good, but they are short programs. A lot of them end up happening during breaks. So spring break, obviously that's not going to happen this year, especially with the change to spring break that we don't know when it's going to be yet. But UCF has already announced there's a change. Holiday, alternative breaks, so holiday breaks, that kind of thing. A lot of these programs end up being that. And then summer's a big time. This is third party and faculty led are pretty much the two options if you're looking at doing summer. We don't offer any faculty led in our school, so I can't speak too much to what kind of options are going to be available this summer. Again, with COVID-19 being top of mind for most people, I don't think there's going to be as many options as are typically, and these typically range from a couple of days to the longest I've seen is like 2 months. But you're probably expecting about a week on average, and they go all over the world. Low credit hours, which is a con, but also sometimes not a con if you're really only looking to do one course and you want to keep your cost down. Now this is, since you're enrolling as a UCF student in a UCF course, this is another one of those scenarios where you might be able to use your financial aid. Again, in a summer semester, this is where it might get a little tricky. Same thing with the short holiday breaks. What kind of aid you're going to get and what your package might look like, obviously is a little different in summer already, so what that might mean. And this is where you want to really work with financial aid to identify your financial situation. And then, price per day is still pretty bad. They tend to be a little bit better, if not on par with the third-party programs. Because it's faculty led and UCF Study Abroad also plays a big role. We're all conscious of the financial cost of all these things, so we try to reduce the cost as much as we can. And so, yeah, I mean, they do what they can. It's just you can't compete when you're looking at a much larger bulk stay somewhere. You're still staying in hotels, or potentially you're renting out there might be renting out a dorm room for a week or something like that. And then there are generally trip itinerary, right? It's active education, so you're going to be going places potentially to learn about whatever the faculty-led study abroad is about. And so that does leave you with little time to go explore and go learn about the country or the city or the surrounding region that you're in, compared to something like a third party or exchange program where you're going to be in a place for a much longer period of time. So in regards to study abroad in general, a 3.0 is required across the board. What I have up here, the minimum requirements are for our study abroad programs, but the first two are really ones that pretty much apply to almost all study abroad programs. Is a 3.0 in good standing. Once you get into provider programs, they have their own set of criteria. I mean, I've seen no GPA requirement. I've also seen a 2.5. I'm a little flexible with cumulative if you're a transfer student or you had some change of major or something in there. So we're always don't look at that 3.0 and immediately think that you're negated. we have some flexibility there with some of our exchange partners. There are some programs that a 3.0 and actually one in particular where a 3.0 isn't good enough in general, and we really are looking for a different caliber of student there. But round about a 3.0, you're probably pretty good. For our exchanges, you have to be either a junior or senior by the time you're going on the exchange, and you have to have completed scope and methods by the time you go on the exchange. That last requirement, having one semester left, really is just you can't graduate in a term that you go abroad as part of an exchange program, just because we do not have your records in time. We typically don't get your transcript for at least 2 months after the exchange ends. So consider that if you go abroad in say spring 2022, you can't graduate spring 2022, but you can graduate in summer, potentially with no coursework or anything. It's just more of an administrative timeline. So financial aid, really when I have conversations with students about study abroad, what we're looking at is your financial profile. So what kind of financial support do you have? Everything from, as you see listed here, Pell Grants, Bright Futures, other scholarships, grants, or awards that you might get from UCF or external institutions or organizations, personal savings, parental support, right? And we really express this as a formula here, where what we're looking at is what's your income and what's your liabilities. So when we plan for financial aid, our goal is to keep you from having a agreement with a rental or staying in the dorms or something like that, because you don't need to be paying for housing in 2 different places. You really need to try and plan so that you're in a position where you're only going to have to worry about covering your rent in one place. Same thing with some other expenses, whether you have a car payment or some of these other things. You really need to factor that into your sort of cost of studying abroad, right? We're not just looking at, well, the baseline cost to study abroad is $4,000. So that's all the money you need. No, there's going to be some other factors in there that we'll need to account for and make sure that you're in a good position. So study abroad can change your life. Talk to anybody who study abroad. If you apply, typically during these workshops, I'll have a student or two that has gone through a study abroad program. Through Zoom, it's a little hard, so I didn't really want to drag them into this right now, but I do have a ton of alumni who have gone through these study abroad programs. If you go back and watch one of our success workshops from earlier in the semester where I had a student panel, Benjamin Giltner is one of the students who went abroad, and he talked about his experience. These pictures up here are actually of students who've gone abroad. On the left is actually Morocco. On the right is Australia. So I'm going to run through our programs. I'm not going to talk too much about this. What I'm going to kind of cover, at least just as a brief idea of when these programs are available, how much they cost in a general sense, and some of the curriculum that you might be able to do there. So University of Canberra is in Australia. Typical cost is on that higher end of about $8,000. The budget on the website's a little wonky. It actually has it at like $14,000, but there's some stuff we can talk about there as to why that's not quite accurate. But I would say $8,000 is a good budget. It's a fall spring semester exchange, so great flexibility there. Coursework is pretty similar to ours. They have a good array of restricted electives to choose from, everything from indigenous politics to terrorism, national security to Asian politics, foreign policy, general comparative politics courses. So a good array of options there. Yeah. University of Northumbria University in Newcastle, which is in northern England. Basically, fairly cheap option. Average cost is probably around $7 grand. Oh, one thing I wanted to note on Australia real quick. This is what I was forgetting. You can work as part of your student visa up to 20 hours. There's no additional things. I have had some students who worked part-time just for sort of entertainment money and travel money. So that's one thing that I also think is helpful to know about Canberra is that if you have your budget, you can also sort of supplement your budget a little bit by working on the side. And I've had a number of students do it with no problem in terms of finding a job and making it work pretty easy. UK actually also has the option to work, but it's a more expensive visa. I've not had any students go that route. Again, it's a little bit of a cheaper program, probably around 6,500 to $7 grand for the full semester. It is a fall spring program as well. They have a pretty tight curriculum, primarily just sort of some general IR, international relations courses on a variety of topics, diplomacy, terrorism. They have a UK politics course, general IR theory. So it's not too wild. 3 courses is full-time for them, so you will end up taking something online. And they run fall spring. Leuphana University in Germany. They have a similar curriculum that's not a huge amount of options, but typically, some courses in international relations and some comparative politics courses, typically something in the Middle East and European Union. Again, about $7 grand. The Leuphana University sometimes offers a scholarship to our students who go. This is a fall-only exchange. It has an interesting timeline. You typically get into country in September and classes start end of September, early October. They do about a month-long orientation, socialization sort of program where you meet with all the other international students and sort of get to know each other, do a little German language training, get to know the city and the general area. It's really good, but their program runs basically September, October until end of February. So you typically have to take classes online in spring. There is a comeback option in January, which I'm not terribly fond of, but if you're interested in going to this program, we can talk about that option. But typically I try to get you to stay full time, especially if they're offering the scholarship, because the conditions of the scholarship is you stay until end of February. Malmo University in Sweden. This is a great program, relatively new. It's pretty cheap, about $6,500 for the semester. It is another fall-only program with the optional extension into spring. Their fall semester runs until the end of January. They have some good courses in human rights, global peace and security, general international relations, and there's one other one I was looking at the other day, but it sort of escapes me. The way their curriculum set up is actually you take 4 courses in one particular area. So the human rights module, you take 4 courses on human rights. They cover different aspects, but basically you do that. And the way their courses are set up is it's 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks. So you're never really in more than one course at a time. So I think it's a pretty interesting curriculum change for a lot of our students. Yeah, so fall only. And then we're going to look at the American University of Central Asia in Kyrgyzstan. Super cheap program, about $4 grand, $4,500. So the left, so these are actually pictures from the student that went. On the left was a horse ride that he said cost about $7. And it was a full day trek around the mountains, and basically, you know, it was a really cheap option, really interesting. If you're interested in learning Russian, this is also a great opportunity to enhance your Russian language skills. A lot of focus in terms of their curriculum on the Central Asia, Russian politics, some terrorism stuff in there, some general, you know, European Union classes, some general IR classes. So a lot of options here as well. All instruction for all of our exchange programs is in English, so there's no need to know any of the languages of the host institutions. Obviously, if this is a language that you're learning or interested in learning, then that's a great opportunity for you, but all instruction is in English. And this is fall spring. American University Cairo, which is in Egypt. Again, instructions in English. If you're interested in learning Arabic, this is one of those. This is another exchange that I would recommend looking into, as it does offer Arabic language courses, along with a really good mix of Middle Eastern politics courses. Again, some general international relations theory, you know, politics, the EU. They also do offer some political theory courses as well. So if you're American politics, or you're a political science major in Union Area C course, they do have a handful of those as well. Cost is probably around $6 to $7 grand. There is a scholarship attached to this program, so there's a possibility for external funding to come in as well. This is fall spring, relatively new. I've only had one student go to this program as well, though I've had a bunch lined up, just sort of fall through. And UCF has sent some students here in general, so it's a good program, well established at this point. And then I have two brand new ones that were supposed to start this past fall spring, but COVID-19 changed that. Which is University of Wrocław in Poland, and then University of Peloponnese in Greece. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull these up on the Study Abroad website since they're newly added. I wanted to go ahead and sort of share this information with you. Also be a good way of getting to know how to navigate that website. So let's go ahead and screen share. Okay. All right. So this is the Study Abroad website. I've done a quick search just to pull out our exchange programs. Not sure why our Peloponnese one doesn't have a featured star. And I'm not actually sure why this one's showing up, other than the fact that it has politics in it, but that is not one of my exchange programs. Only the ones that say politics, security, and international fair exchange are our exchange programs. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Greece and Poland. So there's some general overview information on here. You should be reading this. There's some also additional information. This isn't as filled out as I would like, but typically there's some additional experience information. So students who've gone abroad potentially will connect their blog in there, so you can get a student experience information, and typically a lot of other information as well. So program costs. So when we talk about exchanges, a couple things to think about. If you have Bright Futures or Pell Grant and it typically pays for your tuition, then you sort of already know how this line is going to work out, right? You already know how your tuition is going to get paid. You're going to pay your tuition one way or the other. So really the only added cost of studying abroad, $350 fee from UCF abroad, and then these expenses. Now, most of you probably pay more than, unless you're living at home or living with a relative that's not charging you any rent, you probably pay more than $1,500 a month in housing at UCF. Some of you may even be saying that's almost how much I pay for 1 month's rent, depending on where you're living. So study abroad in general can sometimes be a cheaper venture when you look at it from a living cost standpoint. Obviously, the flight may be something you're not typically spending. If you already have your passport, great, you're saving some change here. And meals and transportation and some of these incidentals realistically are sort of your mileage will vary. I've had students go to, a group of students go to the same exchange program. One shopped at the expensive grocery store, the others all shopped at the cheaper option. And one talked about spending, nearly $3 grand on food over the course of their exchange, and the rest of them said they spent a little bit less than the budgeted $2 grand. So your mileage will vary depending on what you make of some of these things. Housing options also sometimes change. I can tell you for University of Canberra in Australia, you can pick a moderately priced option, or you can pick the university housing option, which is on-campus dorms with 8 other roommates, but you're paying almost nothing. So your mileage will vary in some of these areas. But really what you kind of want to look at is this cost part. Yes, there is a total cost associated that is this bigger number, but realistically, if you're paying your tuition, or your tuition's paid through prepaid or Bright Futures, that's already going to be taken care of through that. Really, we're looking at what is it going to cost to get you into the country and to live and to come back home. And then, as I said in here, you don't see anything about entertainment. So also consider you're going to want to have an entertainment budget in there. And that's sometimes where we pick up some costs in terms of your mileage will vary. Application process is also another place where you need to know, because this is where you're going to be applying and where you're going to go ahead and submit your application. It also typically has the dates for the program. So as you see for Greece, it starts a little bit later, so similar to Germany. Starts a little bit later and runs until basically early February. Our spring option starts late February and runs until July. That spring overlap tends not to be too big of an issue, since for summer, you're either taking classes online or you're not taking anything at all. So summer's not as big of an issue. Let's take a look at Poland. There we go. Again, similar start dates, similar overlaps for the two. So we're really looking at these programs are going to be ones that, if you go in fall, we're kind of going to have to make a commitment to be taking classes online in spring, or you're just, for those of you who are maybe looking at doing this your senior year, or you're supposed to graduate in fall, but you're okay extending to spring. These would be perfectly good options, because you don't actually have to do anything in spring if you're finishing out your last requirements in fall. We're just keeping you until spring to graduate. And one thing that I mentioned to students, especially when we look at, say, this spring, well, July 5th, do I have to come home? No, once you've completed everything you need to do for your academic requirements for that study abroad, whether you come home or not, or you spend the next month or two traveling around Europe or wherever, that's entirely up to you. I'm not going to be asking where you're at. I will want to talk to you to debrief, but we can do that when you get back stateside, or we have this beautiful application called Zoom now that we can just use. Poland, again, looking very good in terms of costs, about $4,100. Again, your mileage may vary a little bit in there. Interesting to see the flight be a little higher, but that could be airport specific. So in general, these are a couple of the places where you're going to want to look. Obviously, like I said, there is a lot more information here, but the application process, the program costs, and then the additional information, yeah, we haven't filled all that much out yet in some of these areas. Okay, so at this point, if anybody has questions about study abroad, application process also lists the requirements as well as the program contact. That's me. Please feel free to reach out. Do note again that I am going to be out of the office starting early November until probably about February 1st. Doesn't hurt to go ahead and put in an application now. I'll follow back up with people afterwards, or you can just reach out and we can have a conversation when I'm back in the office in February about a potential fall 21, spring 22 option. In the meantime, Dr. Gary Smith, who's another advisor in my office, will also be available to field some questions about study abroad as well. So if you do reach out in the interim, he'll be able to answer some of these questions as well. That said, I think everybody who's watching online, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here and allow for some questions for my attendees. Again, thank you for showing up. Thank you for watching this, and please feel free to reach out. The earlier the better with study abroad, whether you're looking at an exchange, a faculty-led, or a third-party program. The earlier we can start planning, the better we can plan. Also, any of those conflicts of interest, right, time issues, schedule issues, we can go ahead and try and address those in other semesters if we have the time. It's a lot harder to do that if I want to graduate in spring 22, and so the only time I want to go abroad is fall 21. That's a lot harder to work with, where if we have a junior and a senior year to work with, that's great. That gives us a lot of time. We can make a lot of great decisions in there. So good luck, take care, and I look forward to hearing from you.